it was a good friend of his, basically approached us and said, hey, I think Dustin has a drug problem. And being Dustin, being an athlete, it really kind of surprised us. And I said, well, why would you say that? And he said, well, last night when I got up, I found a spoon and, a syringe in the bathroom. And I mean, that's just like anything that you would see in a movie. And so we got him here at the house and told him what we knew, and he got very upset, saying that it was a lie, that it wasn't true, and that if he ever found out who told us, he would basically kick their ass, is what he said. He stormed out of the house, and I didn't see him for a couple of weeks.
Tragic death of Philip Seymour Hoffman, the 46-year-old Oscar winner, brilliant actor, found dead in his Manhattan apartment yesterday from an apparent overdose of heroin.
We start with a hair-raising account of a young mother's heroin overdose with her 3-year-old in the back seat.
An alarming new epidemic in Northeast Ohio is claiming more lives than car crashes.
An ABC News investigation tonight, the heroin epidemic in America. Tonight, this number, 129 people die every day in this country from a drug overdose.
You and I are going on a difficult journey. The statistics alone are alarming. The number of heroin users has nearly doubled in just the past 3 years.
The classic definition of an epidemic is a sudden increase of disease or a condition in a community that's above the normal level, and it's usually associated in either in time and place at the same time. An epidemic is widespread, so affecting the community at large or a larger community.
So would you say that heroin and opiate drug abuse has reached the level of an epidemic?
Oh, for sure. I mean, over the last year or so, you've seen that sudden rise in the number of cases, of overdose cases within the community. So certainly that would meet anybody's definition for an epidemic.
So we convinced him to come home. So he moved back into our house in August. My wife, being a nurse, she started to look around and see if she could find him someplace to go, and everywhere that we went that she inquired at, couldn't see him because they were just absolutely full. They were, backed up, and they said we can see him in 6 weeks, or, here's a guy that wanted help now, and we couldn't find any place to put him. So we finally did find a place, and they said we can see him in, 6 weeks or whatever, which would have put him right at the end of September. So we watched him, we controlled him, we did everything we could. We limited his coming and going and really tried to control everything, but he was still very much of an active user, which I didn't know until after the fact. He chose to, what we call, what drug addicts call the last ride. He chose to take the drugs one last time before he went into rehab, and he killed him.
Yeah, I think right now heroin is the most devastating and seductive drug there is. Right now it's the leading killer of our youth. And I'd say 80% of the cases that come through our court now are heroin related.
So when did we really start seeing a rise in the rate of heroin related cases in Stark County?
Well, prior to this job, I was the prosecutor for 20 years, and I don't know if I ever saw a heroin-related case.
Really?
The last 4 years it started, and now it's like the ball that just keeps rolling down the hill. It's escalated, and it's all over. It's with the rich, it's with the middle class, and it's with the poor.
So is there a legal punishment for people who overdose on heroin?
Yes, they could be charged with possession of heroin, sometimes trafficking, and that's generally what we see in my courtroom. We're taking the approach with young people. We don't want to put people in prison for using.
Right.
We get them into treatment, we get them in right away so that they can lead a productive life. The traffickers, those are the ones that we're sending to prison.
On average, who is arrested at a higher rate? Do you see more trials of traffickers or more trials of users?
Sadly, it's the users. We are not, obviously we're trying hard, but we're not getting the amount of traffickers. that we'd like to. You and I talked a little bit earlier. They're coming in from Mexico. It's being shipped in. You know, the United States has not been real successful in making the big amount of hits that we would like to get this to stop from coming in.
So on the topic of like increasing crime, has there been an increase in crime overall, or is it specifically within the area of heroin possession and like heroin use?
There's been a slight increase of crime in Stark County. The violent crime has went down a little bit, but the heroin use and heroin trafficking is at record level. It's an epidemic level. Everyone's calling it an epidemic. That's how high it is.
I looked out and his car was in the driveway, and I thought, he's late for work. I went down there and I thought, this kid, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he slept in or something. And I saw the light on under his door, heard the music, and a bad feeling came over me. And I thought, something's wrong. And I kind of bursted through the doors, and that's when I saw him laying on the floor, and he had a puddle of vomit around him. He was very bluish, purplish, and rigor mortis had set in, his arms were drawn up, and I just freaked out. And I ran over, and I tried to do CPR, but I knew he was dead. It's kind of a blur after that. It was just so horrible, and it was so shocking that I really didn't know what to do. I just sat on the floor downstairs and kind of watched, and they came in and I said, aren't you going to do anything for him? And they just said, he's been dead for hours.
It's becoming as widespread as it is because opiates are such an addictive drug. You know, I don't think that initially when we started prescribing opiates that we understood really what the addictive properties were or how addictive they could be. I think it has to do with over-prescribing. I think we have a culture in the United States where pills can and will fix anything. And I think that we're finally starting to realize that there's a responsibility to prescribing opiates and taking opiates. And unfortunately, that's because of the heroin.
And heroin is cheap. It's widely available, very inexpensive. It's being mixed with other drugs that make it even more of a powerful, desired drug. So it's just very cheap, very widespread. It is the drug of choice now.
If you could do anything over again, what would you do?
Well, it's really interesting. I speak a lot at a lot of schools in the Tri-County area, and I call that a do-over. If I had to do over again, during the course of us trying to get into rehab, no one ever told me that, because this is my first experience with an addict, that no one in my family ever had taken drugs or was, addicted to drugs, so we were the very first. But in our process, no one ever said to us that you have to watch him, that you have to be with him, you have to just really not let him out of your sight prior to going into rehab. If they would have said that to me, I would have, the weekend before, unannounced to him, I would have packed a bag for him, and he and I would have probably headed to a hotel to where I could have physically been in the same room with him, and so where he wouldn't have had a chance to take the drugs, to take the heroin. As it was, after his death, we found out that he was able to get up to Akron on a Thursday. He was supposed to be at work, and he didn't go to work. He had somebody filling for him. He went up to Akron, he got his drugs, brought him back here, had him in our home, and was planning all along to take his drugs. And it changes your brain. And what you have to do, and part of rehab, is you have to retrain your brain on how to go through every day's life. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't know the battle that he was fighting. And if I did, I probably would have been a little bit more compassionate. I would have been a little bit more understanding. And I always felt that he needed just to man up and not do it. I didn't realize the cravings that
Warriors Project is a grassroots movement, a band of brothers and sisters. One of our goals is to not only to eradicate the stigma of addiction, but to come together as a community, to raise awareness in our community, and to be a voice in our community. Our goal is to become a family. You'll hear "I love you" a lot at the Warriors Project. You'll hear family a lot when you're at the Warriors Project.
When I started hanging out with a girl, and she said she didn't know what she was getting me, but she was buying me heroin, and that led to an overdose. I got some heroin cut with fentanyl, which fentanyl is an opiate also, and it's like 15 times stronger than heroin, and I had overdosed.
A little bit about my history. I was an exceptional athlete in high school. I got involved with some gangs, and by 17 years old, I had gotten in so much trouble. My last charge was a DUI, reckless assault, drug abuse, willfully fleeing and attempted assault on a police officer.
And I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. I started using drugs at my 30th birthday. Within 8 months, it had taken my entire life, my son, my home, my husband, my career. Being out using for about 6 years until I was in and out of rehab for about 5 years. Until one day I woke up on the concrete floor, homeless, living in my car, and I decided that I needed to make a change. I started on my road to recovery that day. It hasn't been an easy road, but it's been a fruitful road.
But it's tough. It's been tough for all of us. It's like somebody's gone. He was like really funny and always joking around, and it's like he was just such a character, and it's like when somebody like that disappears from your life suddenly, I mean, it's like a big hole in your life. So you're not parents yet, but you know, when you become parents, you'll understand. You go through a lot physically to bring your children in the world, like, you know, when you're a mother, you know, you have to go through 9 months. You carry a baby, you bring them into the world, and it's a physical thing that you go through, and you go through a lot financially with kids. They're very expensive. You go through a lot emotionally. You have a lot invested in your kids, and you love them very much. You just really bonded with each child that you have. So when you lose one of them, it's a part of you just goes with them.
The heroin outbreak in Stark County is certainly one of the greatest challenges our community has faced in some time. The story of the people who are fighting the effects of heroin on a daily basis is one that must be told. These people have dedicated their lives to combating a drug that has taken control of our community. The efforts of these individuals has brought and will continue to bring a necessary change to our community. Together, through our own actions, we can each be mechanisms of change and bring an end to the heroin epidemic in Stark County.